So the agreement of sale is a 14-page document. Now this is for Pennsylvania, but every state pretty much has the exact same document. So you might see some things here that are exactly the same or a little bit different. But again, this is a 14-page document and it goes through all of the details of writing an offer for your client to purchase a property. So let's name your client Amy Smith. This right here is where your buyer's information goes. Right here is where the seller's information goes. When you're looking for the seller's name or LLC or whoever owns the property, you're going to find that on the MLS. If you're not able to find it through the MLS or tax records, just give the listing agent a call and they'll tell you exactly what to put right there for the seller's information and then also the seller's mailing address. Right here, this is your buyer's current address, not the address of the property that they want to buy. So let's say they live at 123 Main Street in Philadelphia. So again, this is your buyer's information, your buyer's name or the LLC they're purchasing under and their current home address, not the address of the property that they're looking to purchase. Right here, this is where you put the information for the property that they're looking to buy. So let's say the address they're looking to buy is 321 North 5th Street in, let's say, Allentown, PA. So you put the address here, including the postal city. So the entire document kind of tells you what to put everywhere. Let's say, for example, the municipality is Kidder Township. You put that there. School district, Jim Thorpe for the school, Jim Thorpe area. Right here, zip code 18240. Right here is the county. Let's say it's Carbon. And it's obviously, like I said, in Pennsylvania. The tax ID right here, this is very important because sometimes homes have the same address, whether it's in the same town or the same city. It might be 321 North 5th Street or 321 North 6th Street, and it could get really confusing. So with the tax ID, you're going to find this on the tax records of the home. You're easily going to be able to find a link in your MLS to find exactly where to go for this tax ID number. So you find that and you fill that in here. Again, this is probably the most important part because this is the exact identification number of that home. Same thing right here. I always go with the deed book, so you could also find that. Let's just say it's 42-357-411. Again, that will be in your tax records on the MLS. So the next section here is going to show who the brokers and the agents are involved in this transaction. You don't want to skip this section because especially with the new real estate rules that got released in 2024, this section right here has been more important than ever. So right here, this is the buyer's relationship with a licensed PA broker. So that's you if you're writing the offer. Right here, this is your brokerage, not the listing agent's brokerage. So let's say you're with Real. Then if you're whatever brokerage you're at, you'll know your license number at that brokerage. If you don't know, just call your broker. My brokerage license is RB067456. So you put that here to identify the brokerage that's working with the buyer. Your company address, again, you could find that through your brokerage. Super easy. Company phone number, and then your fax number. I don't ever put a fax number because I don't use fax machines, but if you have your brokerage fax number, you could add that here. And then this section right here is also extremely important because it shows, are you a buyer's agent or are you a dual agent? A dual agent means you're working with the seller and the buyer. Let's just say for sake of example, you're only working with the buyer. So on the ML or on your document signing website, you're going to check buyer's agent. Now right here on this side, you see licensee's name. That means you. So what is your name? What's your brokerage license number? What's your individual phone number? And what's your personal email? And then again, right here, you're most likely going to check this first box showing that you're the buyer's agent. The next box means every agent at your brokerage works with that buyer. So that's not the case here. And you're also not a dual agent. So you're going to check the first box here that says, I am the buyer's agent for this property right here. This section right here, moving down, is the seller's relationship with a PA licensed broker. This is where you're going to fill out all of the listing agent's broker and listing agent's information. So let's say EXP listed this property. You put EXP there. You find their company license number on the MLS, the company address on the MLS, phone number. You hit right here that they're the selling agent. Same thing here. This is the listing agent's name. So you grab their name from the MLS, their license number, and if you can't find any of this information in this section, just call that listing agent and ask them. They'll give it to you in 5 seconds. Again, their phone number, their email, and in this situation, they're just working with the seller, so you hit that top box right there. Now, when you send this document out for signatures, you want to make sure that your buyer signs every page, at the bottom of every page. If they don't sign the bottom of every page, that's not a valid offer and it's voidable. Meaning that even if the seller accepts the offer and they look back and your buyer didn't initial it, that's not a legally binding contract. So you need, after you fill out this entire document, you need your buyers to sign every single page before you send it in. Okay, now that page 1 is done, we have 13 more pages to go, and this second page is extremely important. Up here, what you're going to do is you're going to get into the information about the offer. It says, buy this agreement dated. That means put today's date on this offer. So let's say you're writing this on September 7th of 2025. So you just put today's date, the date that you're writing the offer on this top line. The next section is the purchase price. This is not the price that the home is listed for, it's the price that your client is offering. So let's say, for example, a home is listed for $500,000 and your client wants to write an offer for $510,000 because it's very competitive. That's what you put right here. So you put $510,000 on this line because it's what your client is offering to purchase the home as. Moving down to the next section, the initial deposit. This is basically your escrow deposit. That means how much is your client going to put into an escrow account as a good faith deposit to purchase this property. And you see right here, how many days do they have to put that deposit in? The average contract has 5 days, so let's just fill in 5 right there. And let's say they're going to put $25,000 into an escrow account to purchase the property. Now, this is very important because if your client takes 6 days to put that deposit in, you are not technically under contract. You have to then change the date here, get them to initial, and then get them to resend the deposit for the correct amount in the correct time period. So this is extremely important, and you have to follow the dates on this. Moving down to the next section, we're going to see deposit, regardless of the form of payment, will be paid in US dollars to the broker for seller unless otherwise stated here. You'll soon find that a lot of brokerages like eXp, they don't want to hold escrow because they're more of an online brokerage and they don't have a physical presence to accept that check in person. So what I do for all of my offers, I put seller, broker, / title company to hold deposit. So what that's saying is either the seller's broker, which it says right here, or the title company are going to hold the deposit, and that's this dollar amount right there. Moving down to the next section, buyer's broker fee. As of 2024, there's new rules that you are not able to negotiate the commission upfront with the seller for a property. So a lot of brokerages are using a form called the CBC, the Cooperating Brokerage Compensation. If there's no CBC offered and you want to get paid, this section right here is where you're going to fill in your amount. So let's say you want 3% from the seller to work and sell their property. That's where you fill that amount in right there. Moving down, we have the closing cost assistance. Even though your client offered $510,000, maybe they're going to ask for $15,000 to go towards the purchase of the property. So if they're asking for a closing cost assistance or a credit, which is more commonly used, you put that in section 3B right here. Or if they're looking for a percentage, let's just say they're asking for 1.5% of the purchase price to help with their down payment, you put that in the next section right there. Section 4 is super easy. It's just the settlement date. If you're a new agent, a lot of times you think a property might be able to close super quick in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But realistically, you're looking somewhere between 30 and 45 days. When I write an offer for a client, I always put 45 days out from the original offer day so that we have enough time to get everything in place. Nobody feels rushed and we're not having to extend if the lender needs a little bit more time. So on average, I put 45 days here. Now, you're not going to write 45 days. You're going to take this original date and add 45 days on top of it and put that date in here. The rest of this section just talks about settlement and possession. Everybody has to read all the way through this so you understand it, but there's really not much to fill in here, so I'm going to jump over it. Moving down to the next section, written acceptance date of all parties will be on or before blank. This means that the seller has X amount of days to accept your offer. So we're writing this offer on September 7th. Let's say they have until September 9th to accept the offer. That means whatever day you put here, that means if the seller accepts it on or before, you are under contract. They have accepted your offer and you are working with them. If they don't accept it until September 10th, you're not technically under contract because they did not agree to the 9th. This is the only day that your buyer is willing to go to. Now, if the seller accepts on the 10th, 11th, or 12th, you have to make an addendum to this agreement of sale and show that your buyer is willing to still work with them even though they didn't go on the date that you offered. So that's what this line right here is, and it is super important because if you don't put anything here, it's an open-ended contract. And if the seller in 6 months wants to go back and sign this, you now have an accepted offer. So you need to pay attention to this date right here. I typically do 48 hours. If there's a highest and best situation, you might need a little bit more time, but 48 hours is more than enough time for a seller to accept your offer and have all the information they need to work with you. Now, moving on to page 3. Page 3 talks about zoning, fixtures at the property, buyers, financing. So let's just chunk through the entire thing. And again, you want to read this entire contract and know all of the words. I'm just skipping to the most important parts. So zoning, if you don't know the zoning of a house, you just check the tax records. If you're not able to find the tax record on your MLS, you just call the tax office and ask them. So for sake of example, let's say this is a residential house. So I put RESI, and that's short for residential, resi. So that's the zoning qualification for this specific property. Moving down to the next section, fixtures and personal property. As everybody knows, fixtures are items in the home that cannot be removed. For example, kitchen cabinets that are connected to the wall and drilled in, they are fixtures. A swimming pool is a fixture because it's at the property, it's built into the home. But items like a refrigerator or a couch or a dog bed, they are not fixtures, so you want to put those in the included section. So let's say that your client wants the appliances included. You write that here, and the washer and dryer, and let's say there's a golf cart in the garage and they also want that included. That's where you put that right there. Golf cart gets added in section 7B because that's the buyer saying, I want these items with the property. Now, the excluded section, let's say your client doesn't want the washer and dryer, then you'd put washer and dryer here. Let's say they don't want the refrigerator, you put that here. Let's say they don't want the kitchen table, and etc. You put that all in this excluded section. And you want to be very careful with this section here because I've had deals in the past where we weren't clear enough on what's included and excluded, and the day of closing, there was a huge blow up. The buyer and seller were mad at each other, and I ended up not closing that deal because these sections right here were not clear enough. So you want to spend some time here and really draw out what your clients want and what they don't want in this offer. Moving down to the next section, this is your financing section of your agreement. So again, this is very important. Obviously, if your people are offering in cash, this section doesn't matter to you. But if your clients are offering with a loan, this is very, very important. So you want to go through this section slowly and know everything that this is talking about. I'm going to skim through it because as you see, everything is kind of auto-filled here, which comes on a preloaded document. So again, you want to really read through this slowly to make sure you know exactly what you're doing when using a financed offer. Moving on to the next page, right here, section F. This says, will your client be purchasing the property with a mortgage contingency or without a mortgage contingency? You'll see here, let's say your clients are waiving the mortgage contingency. That does not necessarily mean that they are going to give a cash offer. It says it right here. This sale is not contingent on a mortgage financing. Although buyer may obtain mortgage financing and or the parties may include an appraisal contingency, buyer and seller understand that the waiver of this contingency does not restrict the buyer from obtaining financing for the property. So what that means is your client can still pursue a mortgage, but if they don't get approved for that mortgage, then they will be purchasing the property in cash. So what we're going to do for sake of example here is we're going to say this client is definitely using a mortgage. So we click elected. That means if they can't get approved for the mortgage, they are able to get out of the deal. Moving down here, first mortgage on the property. This is the mortgage that your client is going to obtain. Now, if you remember from a couple pages ago, we're offering $510,000 for this property. So let's say your clients are using an 80-20 mortgage, meaning they're financing 80% of the purchase and they're putting 20% down with a conventional loan. So what we're going to do in this line right here is we're going to take 20% off of $510,000. So 80% of the purchase price of $510,000 is $102,000. So really quick cheat sheet, you do 510 minus 20% of this total price, which equals $102,000. The mortgage is then based on $408,000, and that's where you put the loan amount in right here. The minimum term, you'll see this on the pre-approval that the lender gives you. So let's say it's a standard conventional loan, 20% down, 30 years, and again, type of mortgage is conventional. So you fill all of that out right here. That's saying this is the loan amount, this is the length of the mortgage, and this is the type of mortgage. For conventional loans, the loan-to-value ratio is not to exceed, in this example, that is 80%, meaning that the loan to value on the property is not going to be higher than the agreed upon 80%. Your mortgage lender right here, you could use Chase Bank, Movement Mortgage, Morty, whatever company that your client is pre-approved from, you put that right here. For this example, let's use Morty, which is an online mortgage company. The interest rate, again, this will be from your lender. Let's say the interest rate they agreed to is 6.5%. Now, if rates go up or your client's credit score drops a little bit, that rate might go a little bit higher. So as a buffer, you put a number in here that your client is still willing to pay if that mortgage amount goes up. So it goes from 6.5. If rates go up, they're still willing to pay for it if it's at a 7%. So that's what this section right here is. Moving on to the next page. This is going to be a little bit more information about the property. This whole section here is still talking about the mortgage, and you really want to pay attention here. You don't want to miss anything, so make sure you're still reading through that entire section right there. Jumping down a little bit more, a lot of the homes that I sell are in HOAs, meaning that a lot of the water is on a private system, meaning that they have a well in their backyard. So a lot of my deals, what I do is right here, I check on-site water. Let's say you're selling a home in quote, in town, and they have public water, meaning that they have a water bill. Hey guys, we're gonna take a really quick break in the video and invite you to Referral Mate. Referral Mate is for realtors. If you're a realtor, you're going to love it. It's basically an agent-to-agent referral platform. You could think of it as a job board, but for referrals. So far, about 10,000 agents have joined and over $200 million in referrals have been exchanged. So again, if you're an agent and you want to start growing your network through referrals, make sure you join. We'll put the link right below. Every month from the city. What you'll do right there, public water, if you don't know, the MLS will tell you this information, and if the MLS does not tell you that information, make sure you give the listing agent a quick text or call to find out what the water type is for the property. Same thing here with status of sewer. Let's say that's a home in a city and it has a public sewer and you get a sewer bill every single month. So again, make sure you read all of this. You want to know what's going on here, but this is the most important stuff in this section. Next page. This is, again, a page you want to read the entire thing, but most of it is auto-filled, so I'm not going to go through every single word on this. This section right here, it just shows what is the use of this property. Is it agricultural? Is it a farmland? Is it open space? Chances are this won't apply to your first deal. This is more for commercial properties or farms, so make sure you read this, but it probably will not apply to your deal. Moving on to the next page. This is where the contingencies come in for inspections. So right here it says the buyer's due diligence / inspections. This section right here, your client's going to initial all of these that they either want on the elected side or don't want on the waived side. Elected means that they want the inspections to happen. Waived means that they're not going to inspect these things. So going through this, the first one, home/property inspections and environmental hazards. That means they're allowed to inspect the property, check for mold, see if there's any leaks, see if there's any cracks in the floorboards or anything like that. If they want that inspection, which is your standard inspection, you want them to initial right here before they write the offer. If they don't fill this section out, it's considered open-ended, and that by default means that it is waived. So make sure that your clients fill this section out and elect every single inspection that they want. Wood infestation. That means could the buyers check to see if the home has termites or ants or anything? Most of my buyers want to know that. Deed restrictions and zoning. Is this home in a flood zone? Is this home inside of an HOA? Is there any restrictions on this property that your client can't do what they want? So most people want to know that. Going down to the next section, water service. Are they able to get water to the property, and is it clean? Yes, obviously everybody wants that. Radon. Do these people have small kids? Are they wanting to check for radon? Of course, who wouldn't want to check for radon in a home? So again, make sure that your clients fill these out so that they're able to check for these issues. On the next page, more inspections, on-lot sewer. This means, is there an on-lot sewage disposal system, aka a septic tank, on the property? Now, if you remember from the previous page, we said that this home is in a city, so there is no on-lot sewage. So your client could waive this unless the home has a septic tank or they don't care to inspect it. Right here, property and flood insurance. Can they get insurance for this property? You'll find that some homes are uninsurable. Maybe they're in a flood zone. Maybe they're in a high traffic area. Maybe they're in an area that has a lot of wildfires, and insurance companies might not insure this property. So your client always wants to make sure that they could insure the property, because if not, and something bad happens to the home, your client is out all of their money. Property boundaries. Is anybody on your property? Exactly what are the outlines of the home? What is the exact square footage of my lot that I own? Now, most of my clients won't do this because surveys are typically expensive, and people usually won't care if they have 2.9 acres or 2.87. So most of my clients will waive this, but if your client wants to know the exact outline of their land, they're going to elect that inspection. Lead-based paint hazards, the last section of the inspections. So this means a lot of homes before 1987, they had lead-based paint. As everybody knows, if you ingest lead, you will probably get very sick. So homes that are being purchased by families with children, they are very, very particular about this. If a home was built before 1987, there's going to be a separate disclosure that you will receive from the listing agent to show that this home can potentially have lead-based paint. If the home was built after 1978, it won't matter. So let's say this home was built in 2005. There is zero risk of lead paint being in the house, so your client could waive that. This last section, this is the last section. This is for anything in addition to what was listed here. So let's say that this home has a retaining wall that is holding back a river that runs through the property. If your client wants to inspect that item specifically, you want to write that in here. Let's just say they want to inspect the wall, and then they elect that. So that shows the seller, we're inspecting all of these items plus this item outside. Something else that you might see here is an additional structure outside of the house. Let's say there's a detached garage or a barn. Your client has to write that in here, or they cannot inspect it. And if they do inspect it and ask for assistance or out of the deal because of this item that wasn't listed, you cannot get out of the deal. So you want to be very particular here and elect anything that your client wants to have inspected. Moving on to the next page, this again is very, very important. Just like the rest of the document, you want to read this entire thing to understand what this says. Right here, this is the inspection contingency time frame. As you see, if you don't specify, you will have 10 days. Most of my clients prefer a little bit more time to get an inspector out there, review everything, get price quotes for any of the problems. So I always put 14 days right here. Sometimes your listing agents will give you a little bit of pushback and say, let's stick to the 10 days. That's where your negotiation skills come in. You want your clients to have enough time to inspect everything, but not too much time to take them out of the deal. So again, 14 days is what I always do right here because it makes me and my clients the most comfortable. A little bit further, you'll have how many days you're able to negotiate the inspection findings after this 14 days. The autofill here is 5 days. My clients are usually fine with that, so I'll drop a quick 5 right there. Moving down to the next section, if no mutually accepted written offer is reached, or if the seller fails to respond during the negotiation period within 2 days following the end of the negotiation period, the buyer will either accept the property or terminate the agreement. 2 days is perfectly fine right here. If it has to be any longer than 2 days, the listing agent will typically say, hey, listen, my clients are on vacation this week. They really can't look at this. Could we have 4 days right here? So I always stick with the 2 days. If they need a little bit more time, we can negotiate that. The rest of this section, again, it's pretty much auto-filled. You don't have to change these here unless your client specifically asks you to, but you want to review all of this so you know exactly what's going on. You have the exact time frames for the entire agreement of sale. The next entire page is still talking about inspections, the private transfer fee, the OGM, oil, gas, and mineral rights for the property. So these typically do get passed over. Again, you want to read this entire page so you know what's going on, but it's very rare that I will change anything on this entire page. Moving on to the next page, it's pretty similar. As you see, everything is auto-filled, excluding section 16. This says, is the property within a condominium? Is it in an apartment building? Is another good way to think of a condominium. If it is, you will probably know that. If you don't know that, you could call the listing agent and ask, is the home in a homeowners association? AKA, is in the home in an HOA? A lot of homes that I sell are in HOA, so I always check this right here because it tells my clients, FYI, this home is in a community. If the home is in a community and that's not checked and everybody signs this agreement, you're technically not under contract because there's a fact in this that is not true. So if the home is in an HOA, you want to make sure that you check that to prove to your clients this home is in an HOA and for the sellers to agree to that. Now again, looking all the way down here at the bottom of this page, it didn't print out, but you want your clients to initial every single page. If they don't initial every page, then you will not be under contract, even if the seller comes in and signs it here. So again, every single page, make sure that your clients are initialing. Next section right here, this just shows if the home is in the HOA, your client will have 15 days for the order of the resale certificate to be purchased. Traditionally, the seller will order this, but the seller has 15 days to do so. I never change this. I always keep it as 15 days. But if you have a deal that's moving really quickly and it's a cash deal, you want to drop this to like 5 days, because if it's a 21-day close and the seller has 15 days to order this, they might not come in time for the deal to close. So this will only be changed if you're doing a quick closing and you need it taken care of as soon as possible. The next page, again, is pretty standard. Everything is typically auto-filled. Your home warranty, your recording, your assignment, your laws, your foreign investment of a real estate property. All of this is mainly a disclosure to your client, but you want to read this and know what it's talking about. So if your clients have any questions, you could reference this and know what they're talking about. Something that's really important is the section here on Megan's Law. That means, are there any sex offenders in this community that your clients need to know about? If your clients have small children and they want to check to see if there's any offenders in that community, they have to reference section 24 of this agreement of sale. This is extremely important and you want to make sure you know exactly what you're talking about. Again, have your clients initial at the bottom of every page, and when the seller accepts your offer, they will also initial. All right, we're coming down to the wire now. This is the second to last page. Now this whole page, you would look at it and this section probably would not stand out to you. This section is extremely important. I have never, as a listing agent, accepted an offer without this box checked. It says the seller is limited to retaining those sums paid by buyer, including deposit monies, as liquidation damages. What does that mean? A lot of big words in that sentence. That means if your buyer defaults on this purchase for a reason that is not outlined in this entire contract, they are willing to give that money to the seller. Now, if your client doesn't agree that they're outside of the lines of this contract, but the seller does, you will probably go to small claims court, and that's not to scare you. That's what happens. It's pretty standard in transactions. I've dealt with it a few times. What this means is if your buyer is attempting to get out of the purchase for something not outlined in here, they're saying, I will be willing to give you the deposit. So, for example, let's say this entire transaction goes smoothly, you get to the closing table, and your buyer no-shows. That means they're most likely at risk of losing their deposit. It happened to me a couple weeks ago on the seller side, and my seller got to keep a $10,000 deposit because the buyer no-showed on the closing day. Reading down a little bit further, this will show your mediation. That means, what do these terms outline? That means, what do the terms in this section outline? So if this does go to small claims court, this outlines exactly what's going on. Moving to the last page of the gigantic agreement of sale. You don't have to touch much here. I usually won't touch these things unless we have to, obviously. Let's say, for example, right here, special clauses. That means additional items on this agreement that are not in the agreement of sale. For example, your appraisal contingency. An appraisal contingency says, if we're purchasing this property for $510,000 and it appraises at $475,000, your clients can get out of the deal. So let's say these people have an appraisal contingency. That means, again, if they're wanting to get out of the contract because the home did not appraise for the agreed upon price, they have the right to get out of the contract. So as you see, it says addendum right here. If any of these say addendum, that means it's going to be on a separate document that you'll get from your broker to outline the terms that are outside of the agreement of sale. Another one that's a pretty commonly checked box, sale and settlement of other property contingency addendum. Let's say your client, before purchasing the property we're talking about here, has to sell their current home. If they're not able to sell their current home in the agreed upon time frame, then they're able to legally get out of this entire agreement. So if these are the terms of your contract, you want to make sure that they are checked here in the original offer so that your clients don't lose out. The additional terms here. This is a section where you'll put, I call them the random terms. For example, if your client wants to make sure that the swimming pool is cleaned before the sale closes, you add that here. If your clients want the yard to be raked, or your clients want to make sure that the moss is removed from the roof, that's what you put here. And then I always double check it by having my client sign an initial right there. And then I also make sure that the seller signs and initials right there too. Moving down to the absolute last section, you want your clients to initial all of this. Every single section here, this says the buyer received the consumer notice, which hopefully they did. The buyer received the buyer's estimated closing cost before signing this agreement, which you want them to have. The buyer has received the deposit money notice, which you already sent to them, and the buyer has received the lead-based paint hazards disclosure. The only one that might not be initialed is this last one right here, because the home might have been built after 1979. If the home was built after that date, don't worry about the initials there, but these other three are extremely important, and you want to make sure your client not only has these three documents, but initials that they do have it. Final section, most important, because if they don't sign this, you did all of that work for nothing. This section right here just is the final signature of your buyer saying, I read everything, I initialed everything, and I'm agreeing to purchase this property if the seller signs. Obviously, the date is important. Let's say it's September 7th of 2025. Your client signs here, dates it, and after everything is done in this agreement of sale, every page is initialed, every box is checked, your client signs here. When they sign here, the document will be sent back to you. You review everything on this offer, and then you send it to the listing agent. And you will only have an accepted offer when the seller comes back, initials every single page, every single addendum section, and signs right here. If you receive this offer back with the seller's signature everywhere and the date, you have officially gone under contract and your client is ready to purchase this property.